Hi, good day, and welcome to Dynamic Digi. In this session, I want to speak about will Brexit cause a recession in the United Kingdom? Um, I must say at this point, I'm going to offer a strong caveat. I'm not an economist, so what I say is just reasoned opinion from my own study, and I've studied economics to a reasonable degree, but I wouldn't say that that warrants me being considered an economist. So what I say should be taken to some degree with a pinch of salt, just reasoned analysis, not expert or professional analysis. Um, my honest view is that, well, okay, let's start with the definition of a recession. A recession is two consecutive quarters of negative quarters of economic growth, GDP growth. We haven't had that yet. So even though that is the standard benchmark definition of a recession, you have to have at least two consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth. Um, there still are other factors or other indicators that you can look at. There's something called the PMI. I think that's the Purchasers um, Manufacturing Index. I'm not sure if that's the correct acronym, but it's an index that looks at how confident firms are, and if it's above 50, then that shows that they're confident. And generally, as a rule of thumb, if it's below 50, then it's in a recession. The latest figures I saw for that were that it was around 52 or 53, which is above 50, but it had fallen from around in May, April, for around 55. So that certainly means that firms are getting less confident. Another thing you can look at is consumer confidence, and there's no firm data for that either. The data we would have would be pre the referendum, and obviously it's almost a month since the referendum happened, so things would have changed, you would argue, to a large extent since then. Moreover, the forex, well, obviously the pound did fall against the US dollar and against the euro quite sharply immediately after the referendum, but it has stabilized at $1.32.33 for the past few weeks, so that may continue, and against the euro too. So it has stabilized somewhat, albeit from a far lower level than it was pre-referendum or prior to the 23rd of June. Other indicators you can look at unemployment. Though unemployment, as I say, is a lagging indicator because it's only after the effect of lesser growth you would see a rise. Inflation, not so much, because a slowdown in economic growth per se wouldn't cause inflation. Other factors also include business confidence. That has dipped somewhat after the recession, but not to any great alarming degree. So the thing is, we don't have enough data to go on, and to be honest, we don't know. My own honest view is that there probably would be a recession, but I do not think it would be a severe one like it was in 2008. The thing with 2008 is because the banks collapsed, well, not so much collapsed, but certainly there was a credit crunch and confidence in the banking system collapsed. That means all other factors of the economy shut down. Now, the only reason there would be a recession, and I believe it will be a very light recession, is that, well, as said, consumer confidence, business confidence, overall confidence and certainty in the economy has gone down. So there'll be less investments, there'll be firms will be more conservative. So if there are less investments, so less construction, less orders, then that means factories won't make as much. There'll be less general demand in the economy due to the uncertainty. However, I don't think it will be in the short term, yes, of course, it would have an effect, but whether 5-10 years, I doubt it. Of course, in 5 and 10 years, most likely we would have some kind of agreement with the EU, um, whether that's a free trade agreement, or possibly we could utilize free trade agreements with, say, India, China, African countries, South America. And in my opinion, those countries I think are better off having deals with, more so than, say, the EU or the United States or Canada or Australia. Why? Because they're the future, and because they're the future, because they have far more um, um, scope for growth. Because you're going to have a rising middle class in India and China, far more socioeconomic change in certainly the United States or Canada or EU countries or Australia or Japan, then you'd have more demand generally for goods and services. So in that context, then I would say that should be priority, with, say, emerging economies and large emerging economies like China and India should be the priority due to their longevity and far superior potential. When the recession would end, well, as I say, I think it'll be a very light recession, not anything terribly severe. Unemployment may go up slightly, but again, I don't think to any average incomes may stagnate, maybe fall, but again, not to any great degree. I would say probably would end, say, mid-2017. So this quarter we're currently in, which is the third quarter, we're halfway through the third quarter. So the third quarter will be June, July, August. Fourth quarter would be no, sorry. Third quarter is June, July, August, September, and fourth quarter would be October, November, December. So we'll have to see how things go, but my view, as I say, I'm not an economist, just somebody who has studied economics to a level, and my view should not be taken as expert analysis. Just, well, if one was to use the term amateur analysis, fine, I don't think that's putting myself down, because I'm not an academic economist, so what I say should not be taken as any kind of, as it were, gospel. But I'd predict by the middle of 2017 we should emerge, and Britain's long-term success economically post-Brexit, I think, would depend on how well Mrs. May, our new Prime Minister, develop, because I think we need to have a different economic strategy and scope now that we're out of the EU, and also it also depend possibly on the trade deals we strike with emerging economies and the trade deal that we forge with the EU. So thanks very much for listening to Dynamic Digi, and I'll see you next time.